Committee to order. The first thing is to ask if anyone here has any comments or suggestions, and residents in attendance this evening about parking. Okay. Then the third order is the garage management monthly reports.
Forrest Freeman with Reef Impark. Nice to see everybody after pause last month. Going to run through financials for December and also January. So on the December perspective, really focusing more on the year. I mean, we had a nice month. We did lose some monthly parkers at Chestnut Street. There construction at Bicentennial, back to the transit. But as a whole for the year, better than budget, did substantially better than the prize with COVID. Things were ramping up. They tend to tail off as you get towards the end of the year, November, December, drop a little bit. School ends and different things are. But overall, it was a good year, especially compared to 2020. We had brought back a few employees back in July. We haven't brought any additional back at this point. And expense-wise, but versus budget, we were favorable. We were up prior year, predominantly related to credit card fees, and as revenue goes up. Graph basically, we were Bicentennial. There was a slight dip. Chestnut Street started to pick up a little bit. Again, that related to the construction, and Bicentennial has limited space because of that, and Chestnut Street had ample after they were done with their construction, which is January. Budget-wise, we're a bit down, a little bit aggressive, or quite a bit. I was aggressive in the budgets when the transient didn't materialize in the same path. It had been trending up as we were in 2021. And there were some snow events. There was also construction still continuing at Bicentennial, which impacted us a little bit more than anticipated. Still better than 2021. Not a big surprise because lighter in the beginning. But overall, that trend will level out. We start to pick up as we hit February, March. So on the monthly side, things are fine. It's just really making it back on the transit. Did pick up a good number of monthlies at Chestnut Street Garage. I think we're up 5 parkers in February. So and signs of back. Continuing to evaluate the staff. I mean, things seem to be going well. Cleanliness is a focus. Expenses, we were favorable to budget. A little bit under last year, somewhat related to payroll. We did staff in the middle of last year, which higher cost, and again, credit card fees were seeing the dip. Transient side of things and Bicentennial, it relates to the construction piece of it. We're losing some spaces. 50 some spaces roughly, which is impacting us there. Chestnut Street, it'll build back up as the snow events and cause that. Similar trend here. One was revenue, one is tickets. Going just from last year, and kind of revenue was upticking and then trend downward in November and December. January should be the low point, or it'll come back up again and see those highs again of June. Higher than that past COVID. Our fingers crossed. Operationally, things are along. I had some issue. We have a remote monitoring service that helps with the off-peak or the non-staffed hours. Had a couple of issues with phone line issue last night or the night. So we're looking at that. It's the first time it's occurred. Could be troubleshooted and make that doesn't occur again. I know we had an internet back in the beginning January, solved. But outside of that, it's, long, just going, and again, we anticipate the revenue going up, expenses same, flat basically with.
Everything's fine.
Thank you very much.
Now, the director's report.
Thank you very much. I don't have anything prepared report-wise to show you on the screen, but I want to go over a few things with you. Continue on the garage discussion that Forrest just relayed to you. We have a capital project that wrapped up at Chestnut Street Garage this year. We're about 97% complete, which means there's a few punch list items that need to be finished at that garage. And we also began work at the Bicentennial Garage on similar structural repairs and cleaning of the facade. This is all a lot of work that needs to be done if you're going to maintain a outdoor parking garage. Want to keep the water from getting into the seams between the concrete structural members so that you don't have rust and issues down the lane. So this is just going to be a normal thing that we do to maintain our garages. We want them to last 50, 60, 70 years, not 20. And you have to do this kind of work on a regular basis or your garage will not be structurally sound in a short amount of time. The Bicentennial work, because it's weather dependent, is temporarily suspended because the temperatures are too low right now. Various components that we use to fill the seams and to repair the concrete just don't work when the temps are this low, but we do expect to reboot that again in early spring. We're roughly about 33 to 40% complete at this point, judging from what we've been to date. Good things coming over there too, because we do expect part of that project is to have the front facade of that building clean. So it's going to look a lot, hopefully a lot better than, look as good as it's ever looked after that's done. And we're going to do that last in the sequence of things to do with that project. Before I get to the financial and the numbers, which are the sheets that I did hand out to you, I do want you to know that although I have many things to do as borough manager, I am keeping my eye on the parking department and functioning as the strategic planning head of that department. I meet regularly with our manager of enforcement, Hector Mojica, who is here tonight. If you don't know Hector, get to know him. He's been here a long time, knows what he's doing. We have a large, diverse staff of employees in the parking department, 6 enforcement officers, 3 service clerks, and 2 part-time enforcement officers. And it's one of the departments, aside from the police department, obviously, that operates outside the 8 to 5 Monday through Friday timeframe. We have personnel on in the evenings as well as Saturdays. So I want to create a culture of continuous improvement in our departments, and parking's no exception. So we are looking at some improvements to customer service that we want to make. We identified some issues with our residential permit application process that we want to clear up. We want to make it easier and simpler for people to apply. And we put our parking service clerks who deal with this heavily from about 6 to 8 weeks around the expiration of current year permits. They really work their butts off, and I really appreciate them. And there's a long line virtually in the voicemail inbox and in the inbox of permits to process that we work to get through. And I think one of the things that's going to help is to branch the application process into 2 branches, where there'd be one for owners of property in the district and then one for renters of property in the district, because there's a different standard of information and verification we need from renters as opposed to owners. And that might speed things up for the many people who are coming in to get their residential permits who have owned their property and probably are tired of sending us a copy of their utility bill. So we're working on that. We put our service clerks in touch directly with the appropriate IT people at our partner enforcement and permitting provider, which is UpSafety, which sold and bought out twice since it was called UpSafety. So they have a different parent company now. We also have a pretty well put together, but not ready for prime time web map that we want to put on our website. So you can just plug your address in and you'll know what permit you need to get. And there'll be links right to the permitting process through that application. And what we also have learned from the information that Bill gives us is that about half, say, the people who visit our website do so on these things, small screens. So we want to make sure anything we build works on a small screen as well as it does on a large screen. So we're working with our team to make that happen. I'm looking forward to the website work this year. Two more things that I want to bring to everyone's attention is that improvements to regulations. I think we have a legibility problem with our residential permit system. Don't think we need to use as many as letters of the alphabet that we do for our zones. And we don't need to be looking so discreetly at creating subzones within those zones that are monitored at different times of day. It just makes Hector's team's job that much more complicated. And I can't imagine how hard it is for residents to be in zone A, and depending on what block you're parked on, you might be allowed to park there or not at that certain time of day. We want to, where we can, make things more simpler. And I think where we ended up in this situation is a lot of small incremental, well-intentioned changes to the system as a whole without a good overarching vision as to why you would want to standardize the system so that things are compatible, make sense, are legible, are consistent across the geography of the borough, and not so focused on individual blocks and individual concerns that get raised and get brought to council. So I want to be able to help you in those seats make good decisions about policy with good information. So I'm very excited. We have someone hopefully starting in a couple weeks whose specialty is data collection and management and understanding business processes across an entire governmental enterprise with a very strong strength in geospatial information. So a lot of what we deal with is spatial, and a lot of our information happens in the real world, and we need to know just as much what's going on as where it's going on. Once you know where information is happening, you can look at other information that's geocognizant. If we have a real bad problem, for instance, in the police department of theft from auto, is that related to some infrastructure improvement we should be doing with street lighting or the way things are designed or maintained to lower that? Is there a relationship between theft from auto and other sorts of environmental variables that we have control over in our role as government? I'm really excited about this person starting. So I've set a pretty high bar for them to jump over. I think they can do it. And we were going to put in place a system where we're going to have our staff, Hector staff, while they're out doing their normal rounds, just do data collection, count the number of cars parked on streets, and have that piece of data date and time stamped, so that at some point in the future we can then collect all similarly dated and time stamped bits of information and analyze what utilization looks like in the borough. So when you hear anecdotes in a public meeting about I can't park on the street, we can actually give you data. And if between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m., when most people are coming home looking for a parking space, you have 90% utilization. Well, you know what? Yeah, that's a problem. That's hard to park when you have that many cars in the street. The number's 70%. Well, you can still park in the street, you just might not be able to park right in front of your house. If the number's 30%, well, then it's just not a problem, and you have the data to kind of address those concerns when they come up. So that's all coming this year. I just wanted to preview that with you all. I don't have any visuals to show you, but if you do want to look at the numbers, financial performance from the parking department has always been kind of front and center, and the reason is that there's a pretty substantial transfer of dollars between the parking fund to the general fund, and we use those general fund dollars for everything, to pay Bill's salary, to pay for the website, to pay my salary. I'll just make it about you, Bill. The police department is funded through the general fund. Computers, a lot of your capital programming is paid out of the general fund because we're a cash-heavy capital programming government. So that transfer that happens on an annual basis is pretty important. And in 2021, we budgeted $1.5 million transfer, which is about 8% or so of the overall general fund budget. And this year, we have increased that transfer to $1.76 million. So to meet that transfer, parking's got to make money. And I boiled it down to three things on the spreadsheet in front of you. There's three revenue accounts: parking tickets, parking meters, and parking garages. Those are doing really good. That's 90 to 95% of all of the income for the whole department. So we looked at this on a monthly basis last year, and I don't think we need to check in monthly this year because I think things have stabilized. What we've learned is that the effects of the pandemic have waned, and some of the activity that contributes to parking meter revenue, revenue in our garages, and enforcement revenue has all returned. Doesn't look like it did in 2019, but it's come back. So we will keep an eye on it. I do want you to know, though, that last year we did beat budget expectations in 2 out of those 3 categories by a whole lot. We really did really well in enforcement, and we did well in parking garage revenue. There's 2 sides to the enforcement question. No, we're not out running around writing tickets all day long. If we were running the government operations just like a business and profit were the only motive, I would hire 132 enforcement officers and send them out there every day writing parking tickets because they make a lot of money. And then what would we be? Like, it wouldn't be a nice place to be if you had that many enforcement officers running around. So there's efficiency in issuing violations, and there's also efficiency in processing them. And I want to give a big thanks to you, Hector, especially in your team in the parking department. It doesn't work unless you're getting that information into your local district justices in a timely manner. You got to get that information there in 30 days, or else the judge will likely waive the ticket. And if that happens and becomes a chronic problem, guess what? People stop paying fines. We have a really good payment rate, even in the, call it the non-citation period. I think, Hector, it's between 60 and 65% of violations are paid. That's really because he and his team are spending a lot of time making sure the information of unpaid violations is getting to the courts in a timely manner, and the officers are going to court, appearing and testifying. So that's a big piece of it. I just wanted to recognize that. Parking garages have done really well. The revenue is recovered, and that's partly because we have a third party, Forrest and his team, agreed to make some adjustments during the lean months in the pandemic to cut back on staffing, and that helped our profitability with the garages, and that was a big help. So that helped turn around things a lot quicker than it would have if we hadn't been able to make that adjustment. So I appreciate that as well. Parking meters is, if there's one thing here that really is the pulse rate of activity in the borough, I would keep your eye on parking meter monthly revenue. In 2022, in January, we booked 108,000, and last year we booked 72,000. So that's better. It's still not a peak number. It's not a number that gets me really excited if it were June or July. The same seasonality that Forrest was talking about with the garages also occurs with parking meters. And I got to believe Omicron variant had something to do with this downturn, at least in January. I know that Westchester University, for instance, was remote the first couple weeks of their instruction. So look for the February numbers to improve in these three categories. I'll keep supplying this to you on a monthly basis. I think next month we will focus a little bit more on some of the technical and policy and customer service improvements that are coming down the road parking. But that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate this. I like being able to look at this month by month. It helps me to understand where we're coming from a lot more. Okay. Point 5 is the discussion on the metal cases at the Chestnut Street Garage.
Madam Chair, I asked that this be put on the agenda. At our two parking garages, we have silent salespersons that are there hanging on the walls. There's, I believe, 6 on the exterior and 6 on the interior. There's a sample up on the screen of what it should not look like. That's the exterior side of the buildings. And I had in-depth conversations with the bid, and that's the interior, with the bid director, Mr. John O'Brien. And there's 4 points that I wanted to get clarified, through management tonight or the next meeting. The ownership of these metal boxes that are hanging on the sides of our garages. I was told that these metal boxes belong to the borough, and the borough is supposed to maintain them. Is that, as you know, Mr. Metrick?
I'm learning about this in real time with you.
Okay, all right. I'll help you along. The picture on the right is the exterior boxes. The borough is supposed to, and there's 6 of those that look like that. We're supposed to, as first impressions go from an outsider coming into the borough, and they drive past these things, it's not very appealing. Okay, it shows that our lack of enthusiasm for welcoming visitors. So I can tell you that and Mr. O'Brien may be able to help us navigate this a little bit better. The ownership of these boxes do belong to the borough. They were installed by Public Works. They were installed upside down, so they're improperly installed in many cases. And a lot of times they're rusted shut and they have to be broken open in order to get to them. The maintenance, there's no maintenance at all on the exterior ones. And you can see why they look the way they do. And the only time they get open on the exterior is if somebody wants to put something in there like Parks and Rec or Will Williams for the EV parking. And updating, as you can see on the right, there's no updating. So these signs are not very appealing. And then Mr. O'Brien did mention he has they had an informal agreement with the bid for the advertising dollars. One's on the left-hand side. They're on the interior of the first floor. That's just one sample on the west side, but on the east side of the building, there's 4 or 5 of them, and they're very well done. And the bid, through an informal agreement with Borough Council and the borough, they're allowed to sell advertising space. And Mr. O'Brien, you want to cover that so
Sure.
Get
So,
it right.
couple details. So on the interior, so there's these three that are on the western stairwell, closest to High Street. On the Walnut Street side, on the interior stairwell, there are an additional 9. 9 there are in a landscape format, so it's not these side by sides like you see here. The ones on the interior do operate. They get a little swollen, but I can get them open and closed fairly easily. The bid had my understanding, because this was set up under my predecessor, an informal agreement with the borough that we would be in charge of finding advertising dollars for these interior stairwells. That was done, and I want to say that agreement was probably close to 10 years old at least now. And I think at the time, it was probably a handshake agreement between the whoever was borough manager then and the executive director of the bid. The way we have it structured, we charge $200 spot per quarter. So it's on a calendar year. So the first quarter being January, February, March, and then subsequently quarters are chunked up in the next 3 months. We have a formal agreement which we drafted with our attorney from Lamb Mackerlane between us and the person we leased to, covering that we're not liable for any damages to their sign, et cetera, and the agreements for payment and termination. So that is kind of the nutshell of the program that I run. The ones that you see here, these 6, so there's actually a total of 12 on the exterior. There are these 6, which is on the Prescott Street side, kind of same side as this western stairwell. There are 6 that hang on the Walnut Street side on the exterior, and there is another 3 that hang on the Chestnut Street side, in basically the opposite corner from where you are here. These 6 because I've played with these, you can get these open with a screwdriver and a little muscle, but then getting them closed requires a hammer and 20 to 30 minutes of your time, and hoping that you're not going to break anything, because the metal gets so swollen that it'll pop open, but getting it closed is a bit of a bear. The other exterior ones are a little bit more operable. There are a couple that same thing where you could get them open, but getting them closed is quite the challenge. And I noticed the borough just recently added some EV signs for the electric vehicle charging that they offer in the Chestnut Street garage on the first floor. So from my understanding, the borough always was in charge of the ones on the Walnut and Chestnut Street side in terms of the advertising for things like the Turk's Head Music Festival, the Restaurant Festival. There's an event that the library does that's escaping me right now that was put in there. So that was what they were maintaining. And then these back ones, the bid in the chamber would kind of put into some general messaging. It wasn't advertising dollars. The issue that we've had is we just can't close these anymore. So that's why they look in that state of disrepair. I'm not sure if like a simple like metal grinder could kind of be a workaround just to kind of, take down some of that swelling to make it close a little easier. That's a little outside of my realm and expertise there. So that's kind of the status of what we have right now.
So as I mentioned, the interior ones are working very well, and they look great, and they're great silent salespersons, and they're welcoming as you go to the elevator. The borough owns all of them. Okay, what I'm asking is that the parking committee have the borough manager draft up a formal agreement with the bid to either maintain all of them or just maintain the interior ones. So we have something in writing instead of a handshake in case something goes sideways. And if the bid doesn't want to take care of the exterior ones, then borough manager has to appoint somebody to make them look like the bids, silent persons, and not like the one on the right-hand side, because it's pretty disgusting.
So, I see these all the time. The ones inside look amazing. Thank you. I'm all for the formal agreement. Yes. The ones on the outside are too small to view from your vehicle, and I don't really understand trying to pursue.
Well, so just one caveat I forgot to mention. So there are the 12 interior signs. We rent out 10 of them. One of them has parking information, just contact information for the garage. And then one of them we use for community like events that might be going on. I have had several inquiries from local businesses who would be more than willing to rent some of those exterior ones. So it could be a revenue source, whether it's for the bid or for the borough, a higher rate than what I charge. Because there is that interest. So, that's for council to decide, but I'm just throwing that out there, that there is interest out there if you wanted to pursue that.
I love the idea of making money off of them. I am personally mildly offended by the 6 bunched together as a design aesthetic.
Yeah.
The
Nope, understood.
communication, it doesn't work, it doesn't function well. Either replace them or with a single sign or a single sign, no 6 bunched together. And then rent those.
Right.
It is my solution to that.
I'm on board with whatever we do, other than giving it the first impression. You only get to make a first impression once. And the exterior ones are in need of either take the thing down and just leave a blank wall, or have someone come up with an idea, to hang a single banner on the outside.
I have no idea how we go about
The
getting.
borough manager,
Borough manager.
yeah.
Hi, can we have that? Can that be part of the garage rehab projects to replace the exteriors with singles?
There's only 6 of them, Sean, I believe 5 or 6 of those on the right-hand side, as Mr. O'Brien's calling them, the 246. But they're I think there's 5 boxes. There's,
Yeah,
but there's 6,
then there would be, if you're counting that all as one unit,
Yeah.
then there'd be 4 units.
there's 4 units that need to either come down and be replaced.
Yeah, all this is doable. Let's get an inventory of what we got, what condition it's in, and we can price some replacements or repairs, resurrection of existing. I agree with you. I think 6.
When we
Unless
do
you have
it,
a compound eye, I guess looking at 6 things at once is not a good idea.
can we replace them with aluminum or PVC and not steel?
That sounds like a good idea. We can probably talk. It sounds like I could learn something from you about it.
It doesn't rust.
I think when these were originally purchased, at least the exterior ones, because they're both the same make, don't think they were bought with weather in mind. So because there is, as you can see with there's leakage, obviously water damage in the empty ones right there.
Madam Chair, last council, we paid a local company called Major, which is on Church Street, I believe, quite a bit of money to do wayfinding for us. They've actually done a lot of the wayfinding already, so we're not reinventing the wheel on that. It's Majure. I believe they're on Church Street or Chestnut Street, one of the other 2 streets. And we've already paid them. My brain maybe says $27,000 to do all that work already. I don't think we've moved on it yet, so that's a possibility.
And if you're exploring additional signage, not for the exterior, but I don't believe Bicentennial has any kind of interior signage. And I'm not talking about like advertising dollars, but simply like whether it's community events, like one placard, or even not sure in Bicentennial how they advertise parking, like contact information for the garage itself. Could be something that, could at least out and see what that would look like.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
Conversation?
I think too, like the action item here for council would be to instruct the borough manager to draft an agreement with, or instruct the solicitor and borough manager to draft an agreement with the Westchester bid for, the what are we calling this? The advertisement facilities at Chestnut Street Garage. The maintenance, repair, and all those other things, we can work on that. I think that's out of the question. That's not something council needs to tell us to do, but the formal agreement, definitely, I think we should talk about next week.
Point 6, approve the December 2021 Parking Committee meeting minutes.
The minutes were very well written and well received. Thank you, Dana.
Are there any other points of business? Meeting adjourned?
Sent.